Welcome, everyone. We're here today talking with Martina Grubmueller, and she is a transformation catalyst, a consciousness explorer, and also the founder of New Earth or Earth Nouveau HUB, excuse me. And she's a writer and an artist, and we actually met recently in person. And in my perception, anyways, we had a beautiful flowing synergy of energy, and wanted to share with all of you and dive further with her about what she's been writing about and consciously exploring of the Fascia Codex. So welcome, welcome, and looking forward to talking with you today.
Thank you. Thank you, Sareen, for having me on. And it's an absolute pleasure because when I have a backward tension, so what I usually do, I do things and then I later on I acknowledge or realize why I have done it. So I started writing the Fascia Codex a couple of months ago now. Um, and I think I remember what I was looking for was I wanted to find a medium or a concept that would allow me to bring the connective intelligence across all dimensions into the planetary from the human realm into the planetary realm, into the galactic realm, into the cosmic realm, and at the same time keep it embodied, so that we can actually start perceiving that unified consciousness, what we're really talking about, that we are entering or have already entered, literally, somatically, through embodiment. And then obviously fascia popped up, and I've been a Bowen therapist. Well, I have done Bowen in my earlier life, let's call it that. Um, And there was always the discussion about fascia because you're working about around the fascia, on the fascia, with the fascia. And the way I looked at it was, if you think of an egg, you have the yolk and you have the egg white, and it's all fluid. It's a fluid matrix in that egg, right? In that uncooked egg. And that's what fascia really is. That's what we really are. This is what the planet really is. There's a fluidity to it, right? And then there's tension and compression and decompression and information and all of that. Now, when you cook the egg, what happens? It becomes hard, it becomes stagnant, just like what we are perceiving the fascia sometimes, not necessarily consciously, but we start feeling it, right? Somatically, through pain, through discomfort, through, you know, emotional triggers and things like that. And what then can happen is it can break. This is where fragmentation comes from that solidification of that fluidity that we used to have, right? Now, what, and that I have attributed to karmic resolution, to the fragmentation of our experiences, of our perceptions, because, we couldn't really contain from a nervous system perspective the multitude, the multidimensionality of ourselves, right? Um, and as we have been going through the healing process, the defragmentation, the stabilization, the structure of our architecture, the human architecture that is now shining through beautifully, um, all of that is starting to reconfigure itself, to restore itself. And this is what I experienced when I started writing it. And I couldn't have put it into words like that because it just started flowing, and the exploration and the reframing, which I continuously do. I love out creating concepts and words and all of that. And this is when I look back now, it led me to appreciate the high integrity of the oversoul and the embodiment of it, and how fascia truly is um, the the connection to all of it. That's a long answer as usual. So yes.
I loved it. It was great. Thank you. Well, I feel like the interconnectivity to all of it too, through the evolution of our systems and the upgrades, is a really fascinating exploration because our nervous system, our blood, our nervous system, all these other systems that are upgrading, our fascia and the flexibility and the massivity, made up word, but the massivity of that is interwoven through the fabric of existence, and it even goes the way that I perceive it through our bodies into the etheric realm, out into space, into the different planetary systems and star systems, which are reconfiguring also. So it's like from every aspect, from one cell to the macro, and then the multiversal, everything is expanding, like instantaneously, exponentially. But when we actually realize what we have within us and how to simply work with it, it becomes a whole different orchestra. It's a completely different orchestration, which is divine. If you don't mind, can I read a little part of? I found a couple parts that I thought were interesting. I won't read the whole
Sure. Sure, sure,
thing.
sure, sure. Yeah.
Because I feel like that will kind of give some other context, and then we can weave from there. There's fascia as the living metaphor for consciousness, and this is basically what I was just saying, is that everything is a metaphor, right? And everything is reflective of what we are, who we are, and how even when, we say, humanity's evolution, but when I feel that conversation and that energy of unity, consciousness, humanity's evolution, remembering who they are, I feel multiversally all these other planetary systems as well reuniting, and uniting and accelerating, and remembering that they're all connected, because that's not been the case, right? So this living metaphor of the fascias really, to me, feels really important to share. Let's see, where did I find that? Fascia does not evolve through competition, dominance, or struggle. It evolves through coherence. It reorganizes itself by resolving tension, redistributing pressure, forming harmonic pathways, and sustaining an integrated intelligence in which every fiber contributes to the stability of the whole. This sense, fascia is the purest model of coherent space evolution. And I'm just going to scroll forward because there's so much. I really enjoyed this.
Was
But
that from the last chapter, right? That I've
yes,
posted today. Hmm.
um, yeah, and if in a moment too, if you would love to share about how you're releasing them, it's a publication, but you're releasing it like in chapters and sections, which is fascinating too, because it's going along with the current energies versus a publication of, say, a book. By the time the book is, I mean, at least the rate that we're evolving, by the time a book is done being written, it's almost outdated. Just like, you look at a photo that freezes a moment, you look at that photo 5 minutes later and it feels like it's ancient, right? It really is.
Absolutely.
It's that fastly evolving. And but this other part, I mean, there's a lot of it there's so much that's fascinating. But coherence, archetypes, and the role of love. What follows is that on Earth today, incoherence is no longer energetically affordable. Distortion is no longer environmentally viable, and fragmentation cannot hold shape within the strengthened planetary field. And that is so true, because what we're watching is anything that is, dense or, stagnant, etc., is literally coming apart because it can't hold shape in these energies. And coherence has become the organizing physics of both the human system and the emerging civilization, the basis of stability, the determinant of viability, and the medium through which the new archetypal roles function. In the simplest terms, coherence is structural alignment, relational integrity, and field compatibility. Clear transmission of signal without distortion.
Okay. I think what we could do is we could go take a step back in order to look to look into that. Thanks for reading this out. That gives us definitely sort of a guidance where to go. I'm just thinking what's worth looking into, and especially with that particular chapter that I've written. For me, what was very important to recognize, and you've said it already, is that humans are not the protagonists of that change. And this is what sometimes is misunderstood because we think we're creating all the change, you know? It's literally Gaia, Earth, who has changed its position in the galaxy. And this is very, very, very important to acknowledge here. When we say changed position, we immediately go into she moved from A to B or A to Z. It's not about location. It's not about space from that perspective. So when we say Gaia has moved, the Earth has moved, and literally that has already happened. So we are working backwards because we are living on this planet. We are part of the Earth, part of Gaia, part of that organism. We are now starting to sort of, we call it wake up. But what's happening at the moment is that, the level of fragmentation that we've been healing through self-mastery, self-sovereignty, and self-healing and all of that is now no longer, as you read it, it's no longer possible to live with huge fragmentation on this planet because the planet has moved from a rescue planet who was in a low coherence packet for thousands of years, allowing the fragmentation, allowing the karma, allowing the density locks, because not everything is karma. But now she has moved. So now it's for up to us. It's we're being catapulted into a different level of consciousness. So again, we're not going anywhere else. We don't have to travel for that because we need to start acknowledging that space is actually a form of density, it's tension, it's compression, it's decompression. So what we're talking about is a consciousness, a different level of perception, because our levels of consciousness are changing, are adapting to the planetary architecture that is now becoming much clearer, much more coherently aligned, and that no longer allows that fragmentation that we have been going through. So the people that have done certain levels of self-mastery and healing, they're finding that transition with much more ease because they can now start recognizing that, okay, there is a level of personality, of identity that I obviously have identified with for so long, the roles and the tasks and the goal setting and all of that. But there's another level. There's another level, how we came in. There's an incarnational blueprint that we all have come in. And that integrity of that incarnational blueprint that I call architecture, not just me, that we are calling architecture now, human architecture, that is now starting to shine through and coming to the surface. And that human architecture does not work with intention, belief, focus, goal setting. It does not. It works on coherence. So there is an event in the okay, so this is as a word I always get it, inevitability, right? That is attached to coherence. It's like whatever has to happen because of the architecture that you come in with will now start to harmonically align, coherently align, without you having to make choices, without you having to trust the process. It obviously depends on the level of, exploration and the level of healing and the level of fragmentation, the various people have done, but at the end of the day, if we can start acknowledging that there is a completely different level of functioning on this planet now that goes beyond emotional sentiments, that goes beyond story, that goes beyond roles, identities, then everything, the perception changes. And it goes very quickly. I mean, there was a time when I used to write something and, it took me some time to integrate. Now it's like, okay, whoosh, okay, every day is a different day. I can no longer define myself. And you've said the same. It's becoming more and more, what's the word? Well, coherently aligned. That is the word. And do we feel less grounded? Absolutely not.
Right.
Do we feel less embodied? Absolutely not. We feel more embodied. We feel the joy of the ordinariness. And what I'm starting to lose is I'm starting to lose the symbolism. I'm starting to lose the metaphorical need to express certain things because the clarity and the precision of that architecture, once it becomes open, once you can start acknowledging it, it just does the thing for you. You don't have to prepare anymore. I'm not saying that you are going to, immediately feel the difference, but we can start sensing that now and open ourselves up to that. And as we do, everything is starting to align, to restore, if you wish. Even, we were talking about the primordial matrix. She has already restored itself. Everything has already been done. It's almost like we've come back from the future, if there would be such a thing, right? Now we're starting to acknowledge that because we're not going anywhere, right? We're not
Right.
going anywhere.
Right.
Past, future, present, it's all happening here right now within our consciousness. And this is the thing which has changed. Why did the fragmentation happen on Earth in the first place? Because there was this cognitive evolution, I don't know, 60,000 years ago, whenever, and the human being did not have a container that could hold that expansion.
Right. Right.
Right? This is where it all started to collapse. The fear came in, all the gods came in. That was all the myths came in and all of that. So the more we are now starting to acknowledge that we have the nervous system now that is compatible to that. Yeah. We have a level of international exposure that allows us to sort of have a culture, right? So to outsource, we don't have to hold everything in our biology anymore. And it's one of the things that I'm realizing. Why do I write? I don't necessarily, I'm so grateful you have read it. I don't think anyone really does read it. It doesn't matter to me because for me, I have to write because this is how my architecture works. It's like I'm metabolizing information and meaning by writing it through my fingers. Even if I use the computer, it doesn't matter. And as soon as I post it, I've written it, it's out of my system, it's metabolized, it's digested. Now, in the beginning of our human journey, we didn't have so many outlets to metabolize information. The metabolism was in the infant state. This is why everything just started breaking and fragmenting. But now we're basically coming back to something that is much greater and grander and more polished and more architecturally defined. And it's beautiful.
Well, in many ways, and thank you for that, because what that feels like to me too is that in many ways, the the coherence that is now and the pure energy that is now here all can be implemented. So because everything is happening now, this before and this current moment and this future, so to speak, is merged here in this unified one pure energy. And what that's doing is taking all of the seeds, your spiraling seeded were rocks in the background, but reminds me of seeds. It's breaking those seeds that were planted in this before, slash parallel now, that are finally cultivatable, made up word, but cultivatable in this present moment, because really when anything is thought, it's already done. You move on to the next thing, right? So really all these things are done because they've already been created, but now they can be implemented. So many of the people that are here now or coming, arriving now, these, new children, etc., are energies, are beings, souls that have been here in this proverbial before, coming to implement now that we can cultivate and build and co-create it together. So it does really feel like that bringing together of everyone from everywhere, from all of time and space to come and actually um, bring that through the fascia network into the unity web. You want to say one unified web is what it feels like we're actually doing, bringing all these aspects from all these different times and timelines into wholeness and creating what uh, is to be that, which was intended to be that, as we're simultaneously helping to dissolve and collapse this other stuff that was created incoherently. And to me, I think it's fascinating how, and I've always found this fascinating since I was a kid, is that people are now saying they're so surprised that they're having a thought and then it's instantly manifesting. It's like, well, of course it is. That's how it works. That's when, like
Yes.
it's not a surprise. And when I was little, I was surprised that people were doing the opposite and going, why is it not arriving? It's like, well, because it's not being energized correctly. And so now when people are thinking thoughts, they're saying, "Oh, look at all these synchronicities. It's implementing right away." And it's because the coherent nature of the field now can do so, and that's why there's such an acceleration now of people coming together. All these different tribes, you want to say, coming together to weave, help dissolve, recreate, rebuild on the right lines, even, through the geometry to actually configure structures correctly, and everything through those simultaneous dissolutions. That's all happening. You say ancient future, right? But it's really all the
Mm.
same. It's all right here.
It is all the same. It is all the same. But again, that was part of the outsourcing, right? Um, to use terms like that. Even karma is one of those concepts that we outsourced. It was a container. Karma was a container. It wasn't a lie. You could say it was the lie, just like incarnation was the lie, the reincarnation was a lie. You can call it that. Or you could say it had its purpose. Karma had its purpose because it served as a container to recognize, for people to recognize that they were more than just in this life, more than just flesh and bones. They were more. There was a multidimensionality to it. But now, at this level of karmic resolution, if you want to call it, karma is no longer useful even because it just drags you back into the story, into the trauma loops and all of that. Karma is literally dissolved now. That doesn't mean that we still have to do, clearings and have certain awarenesses and things like that. But literally, once we start acknowledging that, and you said something important, is that this is now possible because the planetary energy has changed. So I want to really say that because when I wrote this chapter, I thought that is so important to say that because, we've been struggling for so long, right? But now, and obviously it didn't happen yesterday or before I started, right? It happened already, let's say 2012. Yeah, everyone is sort of. So let's say that window between 2012 and 2032 is the time now to literally acknowledge that Earth has changed. It is now back an architectural planet, which allows us to embody our high integrity, our higher oversoul integrity, to start working from the architecture instead of looking for faults and traumas and stories all the time, and let go of the karma. It's done. So it's done. And just play with that. Come from that perspective, not focus, not intention, and just see what else is there now. So how do we work? How do we manifest? What do we do? I mean, think of that. After fragmentation, the majority of the jobs are like, shit, what are all the healers are gonna do now? What are all the, you know? And of course, this is not a recipe for all, right? We all are on different levels of awareness. So the healer is just as important as the one who talks about coherence and architecture and oversoul embodiment. You know what I mean? But for those that are asking the question, is like, what's next? I've done the work. I know, and now I'm losing all interest in what's out there. There's no podcast out there that interests me anymore. There's no healing modality. There's nothing that inspires me anymore because it's not about that anymore. Inspiration is now a coherent architectural impulse.
Well, that's exactly what I'm, when I say realizing, but further realizing and watching other people realize is that when you come to that awareness and that energetic frequency, you're not actually doing any of those things. Those languages, those conversations become inaudible. You know,
Yes.
so for me, there's a completely different frequency language where words aren't, where we can use words for certain purposes, right? And it has frequency within it to create these dialogues. But the energy emanation, the frequency of the emanation is the magnetics of bringing that next slash this now into motion, which whatever that present moment is what it needs to be. So there's no space for needing to look for further things. Everything is instantaneously arriving as needed, as requested, or as cultivated, seated in the so-called before. It's all doing everything it needs to do, even if that means it's simultaneously, moving things away, recalibrating it apart, reconfiguring it, readjusting time space where, schedules change, things dissolve, cancel, reconfigure, etc. It's doing that for that reason. That's in a way the fascia, right? It's the network. I mean, in a way, where it's like the antenna emanating the signal that's bringing apart, and through the etheric web, creating that experience you're in.
Well, think about yeah. There's lots of that, and we are obviously talking from an architectural perspective here, and that's really important to say because you've come in with a very clean architecture already that allowed you to perceive the energies, the frequencies, the vibration much more harmonically. That was probably that what is this? I don't understand why people are like that. And there are lots of people who have done that. And then what often happens, and that's important probably to mention to some, not everyone comes in with huge loads of karma. So like Cyrene would have come in, even myself have come in with no karma, but then to live as a human being in that energy when I came in, I could not have sustained that. And also, so what happens then is you take on other people's belief system. That doesn't mean that that is karma that you brought with you. But it means that you start taking that on and making it yours. So I often, with my awareness now, is that I have taken on those belief systems and then made them mine. And it took me the time, whatever it took me, to let that back go again. But also, when I look at it from their perspective, it has explained to me now is why it has been so fast for me to let things go. And I've never gone into that huge grieving process of it, because for me, it's like you have an awareness and okay, done, integrated. Let's move on. There's no ritual, there's no ceremony, there's no
Right.
activation, there's no this, there's no that.
Right.
And
It's
I've
like,
never understood that. I made myself wrong for not being the big mantra and this and that. That is not my architecture, right?
right. I
So
agree.
and that's interesting. So it's really for me, acknowledging the architecture that I've come in with has been tremendously fun, really. It's like, oh God, that's why this was like that and that. So why am I saying that? I don't know. I can't remember what. It'll come back.
That's
What
okay.
what were we saying in the beginning? Anyway, carry on.
That's
It will
no,
come back.
it's all in flow. So I was just thinking as you were saying that what when I was younger, one of the things that I was wondering is, and what I felt and came into realization recently, more recently, was that I used to feel like I came in reverse in a way. And when I say that, what I'm referencing is I came in with complete knowing and access and, speaking with different realms and conversations, feeling like everything is all accessible right where it is. I just, think the thought and tune into it. And at the time I was looking around going, well, nobody else feels like they can see that or is aware of these things. So why am I here right now? Is this, I say too early, but now I look at it more recently, look at it in this reverse way where people are coming to discover these things now and they're wondering, well, how do I do this? How am I multidimensionally here and all these other places, and it comes to be a different way to perceive it and assist with the understanding of it, even if it's not directly explained, because everyone's experience is unique. But having it be that way, I have a different awareness about the why, and I mean, to be quite frank, I don't think I would have understood how to be in a human experience any other way, other than coming in from the backside, so to speak. Because none of it, I came in and I was like, well, none of this makes any sense. But
Yeah.
I needed to come in from a really human way to make sense out of what so-called was, to bring it into this now, so that as the dissolution, reconfiguration, recalibration is coming into that spiral, that now it can cohesively collaborate with what's like through all these different layers is waving in through the different awareness. So it's like, oh, I get it now, it makes sense now, but it didn't necessarily then, right?
No, I can appreciate that. And that was, as you know, it was necessary, but also you got to look at what was the purpose of having people like you come onto this planet at that stage, to come in with such a clean architecture and yet learn about embodiment. Because remember, I mean, this is not ascension, what people call it, or waking up, or we're not going anywhere.
Right.
We are starting to hold that amplified coherence, consciousness within our bodies. So the embodiment journey is becoming more important. So that's why everyone is going on about presence. And we're talking about a different kind of presence, not just putting your feet bare feet on the ground. It's like a multi-dimensional presence now, which
Yes.
is a completely different story. But also the other thing is for people like, and again, there is no hierarchy, there's no competition, there's none of that. We're just talking about different types of architecture because this is the diversification, the divergence that is going on this planet, because we need contrast. So every single one of us has a different architecture. It might sort of, um, it's all coherent anyway. Yeah, because otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation right here, right now, if we wouldn't have a coherent architecture running. Um, but it's not the sameness. There is no sameness in that oneness, in that unified, consciousness field, because everyone has a very specific mission. But there's definitely something with certain architectures, and I would definitely put you into that category as well, because it's familiar to me, is the stabilizers that are arch, architectures that have come here, and there's lots of us here now because we have to stabilize the field. Yes, the earth has changed, but we still have to stabilize the human energy through the fascia, obviously into the new level of coherence, into that new level of amplified consciousness. And it's all about tension. The fascia is literally the instrument together with the entirety of the body. Because the fascia works with what? We talked about the fluidity. It's a fluidity matrix, right? And then you have tension and information, and compression and decompression and all of that. And as everything is working, we are bringing in planetary distortions are reflected in our fascia because it's all interconnected, right? So you might have a knee pain because, I don't know, in Nicaragua, there's an earthquake or something, and you don't even know. You don't think about it that way. So our first thing is go, okay, karmic resolution. Which lifetime have I had, and what was wrong then? Don't no longer do that. No, that was fun. It was fun. It was useful and all of, but no, no, we've become literally connected now. If you so perceive it. I don't even want to call it choosing anymore, because once you acknowledge your architecture, even choice gets thrown out. It's just inevitability. That's my new word. I have to learn to say it properly. It's an inevitability that certain things are going to happen or not going to happen. Yeah. So fascia gives us that. It connects us and it allows us, and this is really the reminder for us all, to we have to start feeling, because we're going to come out, all this blah blah is starting to disappear more and more and more and more as we're becoming more telepathic. And I can totally step into this, but I do stuff like that, these discussions twice a week maybe. And the rest I'm in stillness.
Right.
So
Right.
stabilizers, let me just say one thing with the stabilizers, because it's misunderstood. Because it doesn't mean that you have come in to stabilize other people, to take their shit, give and make sure that they are coherently aligned. No. It means that you have to stabilize yourself coherently aligned to your architecture, to your mission, to who you are, to what brings you joy, what is, celebratory for you. And that makes the difference. That's when you start bringing the light into that. You know, I used to call it vehicle. I can't call it vehicle anymore because movement has changed for me too. There's no different location. Everything is coming through me. Everything is passing through me. And I've always said that, but I didn't really understand the implications. But when I just recently, let me just say that quickly. decoded the Coricancha map, the Cusco map in the Cusco, the Inca map in the Cusco museum. That was in 23. I was there in Peru, had it on a journey, and I stood in front of that golden pentagon, you know, and I started crying bitterly and had absolutely no idea why. And 2 years now, I looked back, I looked, I Googled and everything to try to get some, to find out what all the little symbols meant, and nothing made sense to me. And just recently it did. And I started decoding it in a 37 page. And I obviously I used AI, which was super useful, you know, to write it so quickly. And so it's so structured because I wanted not just I've given the Lyran because my brain I've got a huge connection to Lyran background. So I decoded that Coricancha map from an incarnation perspective, from an incarnation blueprint, how the soul, how the consciousness comes into form, basically, because that's what this map is all about. And there's obviously the Andeans and the Egyptians and all of them, they all have their different, not too much different to what I've come up with, but for me, I wanted the very original one. And that's what the Lyrans were for. They created frameworks for embodiment. And of course, this is part of my mission journey, which I have started to not journey. I can't say journey either anymore because it's not a journey, right? There's so much to reframe. Anyway, so why I'm saying this whole thing is on that map there's an oval, and they call it the Ascension Gate, where the consciousness basically gets translated into form. And all the different symbols have a meaning to it. And then, of course, the way we come down, we got to come up. Again, there's no up or down, but we have to use that kind of metaphors now because otherwise, how do you explain anything? So what I've started realizing is that because, I mean, you got the Egyptians, they say, okay, Orion's belt. So we came through Orion's belt. And then you got us, the Pleiadians, say we come through the Pleiades. And then, and at the end of the day, we didn't come through anything other than the fetus of the womb. That's the only portal really that we've come in from, because everything else is very much perceived through the level of incarnations, if you wish, architecture, if you wish, where we come from, what have we experienced over time and everything. But the main thing I'm saying here is, and now I'm getting to the point, consciousness, and this is what incarnation literally is. Consciousness is a compression, a compression of consciousness that is like, whoa, light, right? Sound, whatever you want to call it, and it gets compressed through that ascension gate. That's just the symbolism as well, into form. Now, depending on who you talk to, they can remember they came in through certain gates, blah, blah, blah. But that's just symbolism, really, at the end of the day, because there is no such thing as different locations, different ascension, descension gates. So that decompression, just confirmed something to me because, and then you obviously live in that state. This is what the fascia is all about. The fascia, tension, letting go, decompression, compression. That's what the fascia is.
Well, that brings up like a whole myriad of important points about the flow of things when we look at the dimensional octaves, right? Because people are, well, many people are still identifying with these different locations or these identities. And while, many have a myriad of DNA compositions, right, from different systems they've been on or in, but when you arrived through, you came through an actual physical body, But even now, if we look at physicality, as we're accelerating and evolving swiftly, there's actually quite a few people that are saying that physicalness, the actual form and the matter, doesn't exist. So there is no actual matter. So as we're accelerating and evolving, the actual density of things, gravity, density, all of it is changing. So what are we identifying with? You know, what plane or what, so-called planet or star system is actually the it when, these constellation maps are incorrect for the most part, or the alignment of what they drew and how it looks or how it's aligned, even those things are changing. It's fluid. It's all fluid. It's fluid in the flow of what movement is it and why. What is its current rate of oscillation will be where it's located dimensionally. And there's no, I mean, you put numbers on these dimensional planes, but they're really not, they're not in that way. There's the perception that puts that 1 to 2, 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, this is there and that's there, to create this perception of proximity, to give something, an understanding with the mind. But as that's evolving and accelerating, even those things are dissolving, right? So we're looking at our matter, and looking around us, dissolving, our perceptions, limited perceptions of these things, and it's becoming so much more of a different experience.
It's becoming a different experience, but I would say one thing to that. We are in the beginning phase of acknowledging that from a body perspective. And I think it's really important to still honor the physicality and the need for nervous system compatibility, and the importance of stabilizing that light. I don't care if you want to call it light or energy or frequency that is coming in, because we have a physical body and we
Right.
can't think that away and or define that away, because that's the whole point of being here, to work with it, to embody it, and to become, and this is the experiment, if you wish, to become that high integrity, high oversoul integrity within a physicality.
Yes.
So there are fundamental stabilizations and structures that are required. Yeah, we have to eat, we have to sleep, maybe less. Yes, absolutely. We're all starting to eat less, and some people don't eat anymore, and that's fine too. But that does not apply to the majority of humanity. So it's like these are fundamental structures that have to be honored. But from there, everything else is here, is a possibility if it is coherently aligned. And the thing is, there is no more seeking. Now, this is the other thing, that you don't seek these things. Once the surge stops, and I think lots of people can identify with that. I mean, I've called myself a consciousness explorer. I always have. This is my kind of fun. And now it's like, can I still explore consciousness without seeking? And yeah, because it gets out of the head, out of the definition, out of all of that. It comes into the body. So the real consciousness exploration happens when we can feel it,
Right.
you know? So everything, I mean, this is not, I'm not just doing this because I think I need to do this or not, but this is, my kind of, what you guys did in Mexico. It's like, blah, blah, blah. I do this when I speak, because I speak with I speak with my fascia. I have no idea what that means, but it means something. And this is the thing, at some stage, sense is absolutely no longer significant. I'm not here to make sense. I hope I do not make sense. Then we have
Well,
achieved something, right?
Well, what I'm picturing as you're saying that, and feeling as, sensing as you're saying that is, if we look at the fascia then and sensing, right? We're experiencing it beyond, beyond the mind because we're sensing it, we're feeling it, we're experiencing it through our body. So how is that, and how do you feel that is correlated to the heart and the expansions with the heart? Feeling, is that where you're feeling the fascia is flowing through?
Um, Everything has to be redefined at some stage, if that is something that, and it will happen, you know. It's like we considered the spine as the structure of the body, right? But in fact, from a frequency perspective, it's actually a tuning instrument, right? And this is why I don't want to call the body, and that's a new thing. I just thought, I can't actually call it a vehicle anymore because that's somehow, you know, implies that I'm on a journey from here to here, which I'm not. I'm no longer on a journey, right?
Right.
So the body literally is a standing sine wave of experience. So the spine is the tuner of it, right? And then you have all the different organs. I haven't, we could look at that. I haven't really looked at all of that, but inclusive of the heart that has a certain function that can translated, interpreted to the to the planet, to the galaxy, to the solar system. The heart for me has always been um, the fabric of existence, expressing the love, because every love is heart, heart is love, right? Well, you got to look at this fascia, as you say, it's got blood flow back and forth. You can look at that, but heart is always associated with love. Now, for me, what are you talking about? You're talking about love as structural intelligence or as lovey-dovey sentiment. So it's two different things. And love as sentiment is so bastardized on so many levels, if you think about it, with regards to relationships and marriage and all of this. So, I always stayed away from that. And I always looked at it as the fabric of existence. We wouldn't exist without it, right? And I mean, that's big enough, right?
Yeah.
That is big enough. It is the fabric of existence. And it has the most amazing, it makes you, it has the most amazing implications and what you can do with it and all of that. The most important thing for me, it's connect to the galactic heart. Yeah. So it's for me, the heart is expansive. I don't use the word opening because my heart was always open. Otherwise, I would have been dead. And I think that goes for everyone. There's no such thing as opening the heart, but that's just me. I
Right.
totally appreciate the fact that for me, the heart is expansion,
Yes.
right? But then again, I have expansion on the one side. Okay, so what do I do? I've got a body, right? For me, I'm all about embodiment because I am here to stabilize the energies that are coming in. So I'm here to stabilize the new levels of consciousness. That is literally, I've come in here specifically 2012 to 2032, where we need to stabilize that new architect planet that Earth has moved into. So, okay, expansive, brilliant. Now, what stabilizes it? It's coherence. Coherence stabilizes everything. And I think I said that somewhere, in
I
my
think a few
chapter.
times.
Yeah. But I can appreciate the attachment to heart, but then again, I also have to sort of think of everything you attach to is limiting to you, you know? And that's really where we're going. If you're still attached to certain roles, to certain stories, to certain dramas, traumas, even people, um,
Right.
you're going to go beyond coherence because coherence is not attachment. Coherence is inevitability, you know? And that's a huge difference. And I felt so happy when I started exploring that, because everything started making sense on a so much better level. And it doesn't exclude the one and makes anything right or wrong, because everything had its place. Fragmentation had its place, karmic resolution, healing, all of that, you know. Um, and now we have to start looking in a different way, because we can. And why would we not?
Well, all these different
This is
aspects are bringing it back to the one. It's bringing it back to the one. So we've explored all these different, and I look at it very parallel to that too, with all the storylines and the different, almost like dogmas. There's all these different storylines and teachings and things of that nature. But we're going back. Not that we ever left. That's even a confusion, right? A confusion that we ever left anywhere could ever be disconnected. But we're really going into the spiral into the one that we've always been, dissolving all these stories. But that goes into really, if you want to say, the one unified heart, which is the one unified thought. So really, instead of going this upward to these numbered dimensions, you're going in a way in reverse into the one. So you're you're spiraling back in, but you're doing it from and with, like, into your within, into your physical body. You're coming all the way within yourself to realize that you've always been one with everything and everyone. So it's
absolutely just like you said, you've never left.
it's never it
You've never left. Wherever
right,
that is, you've never left. So literally, you've translated, you've projected your consciousness into form on this planet Earth. At the same time, simultaneously, you projecting your consciousness you into different planets, different galaxies, different universes, even, you know.
right,
But on some level, you're not fractured because of that. And this is this whole avatar experience that we are starting to experience whilst we have a fraction, because not all our consciousness is literally decompressed into that form. It is an impossibility.
right,
But we have a certain level of it now that allows us to function coherently with an awareness that we exist simultaneously in other places or not. But, again, location, but that it's becoming so difficult, to and I think literally we're getting to a stage where we have to stop having conversations like that, because we will no longer need to.
right,
Right? I mean, I'm super happy that we're not there yet, because I love chatting like this. But you know what I mean? Because
right,
it's like, eh, even explanation is no longer um but first of all, it's coming from, it's my personal perspective anyway, and that's obviously something, I always like to add to all of that, because not everyone has the same architectural uh, structure to bring information forward. But at the end of the day, we all do it quite similar, right? I think you said that in the beginning. But with a different sort of edge to it.
right. Yeah. Well, I think what we're doing is dissolving these boxes and these identities, and realizing that we really don't. There's layers of people that in certain awarenesses that are needing these teachings per se to understand basic comprehensions of what's happening. But once you dissolve these needings to have those experiences, you don't need to have the definition or the why of the storyline, right? You can just step into this different experience. It's not a necessary thing to do. Like, we look at polarity, even, the choice and the creation of having a polarized experience. And now many people that are in, what we want to say, ranges of suffering, they're having suffering experiences to realize they don't need to suffer, and it just seems kind of silly in a way when you're like, well, you wanted to have this experience to realize that you weren't separate, and now still not separate, even though you thought you were or were confused in that way, just to realize that was an experience you chose to have for a specific reason, you know? So it's one of those waves and layers of people coming to decide that they just don't need to have that experience anymore.
Absolutely. It reminds me, when you speak of that, it reminds me of the elephant, right? Who's been chained to a pole for all his life. And then the chain is taken off. Literally, that's what we are experiencing. The chain has been taken off, and
Yeah,
people are still not moving away from their old levels of consciousness perception because they still have the they still think they are chained, but they're not. And I
right.
think this is the message, really. You're no longer chained. The earth has changed. The earth has transformed. Gaia's consciousness is now in a higher bandwidth, if you wish, which makes it inevitable, my word, my new word again, for every organism on this planet to upgrade or to exit.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that either. Nothing wrong with that either. You just, decompress and you take your consciousness back to where you used to and invest it somewhere else. That's absolutely fine. I've got no issues with that whatsoever. Just be aware of that. Because people who are still working on a certain level of choice can make those choices now.
Yeah.
Because working from a level of coherence is something we need to practice too. I mean, I would say we do. How do you feel about having to practice that?
Well, I think it's a constant conscious choice that's needed
Mhm.
while there are those other layers and waves still
Mm.
here, present on the planet because there still is a density of thought, through certain aspects of humanity that are still in that. So it is important to do that. But well, not but as an aside to what you were saying before, that I wanted to point out is that if you look at the fascia, right, in aspect of the human body and the evolution of the human body, or installing, which is simultaneous to stabilizing, in my perspective, is installing, anchoring, transmitting information back and receiving, through that stabilization of being in that physical body. We're also transmitting, we're receiving, we're doing a multitude of different things, anchoring, etc. Even in this experience or any experience we're having. But how do you feel the fascia's role, or that role, but interweaving through like the cosmos as through the planetary systems? If we look at the fascia out into the vastness of space, not in the story, or not in a description, but how is the function and the fluidity of the information in your perspective? I'm curious.
Mhm. Well, the function is working, it's functioning, it's already doing what it's supposed to be doing. And again, there's we don't have to change anything in the body here. We just have to change our perception of it. And I think, a lot of that is starting to trickle through now because we talk about, well, how do we connect to the cosmos? We're waiting for the ETs to come. We're talking about interdimensionals, hybrids, and stuff like that. And I'm not going into this, but per se, but I do want to say one thing. If we internalize that, whatever we are externalizing here by saying the ETs that is literally a higher level amplified consciousness that we have through the fragmentation over thousands and thousands of years, where we made, because the body could not stabilize the information, the consciousness in the fascia, in the nervous system, so we had to externalize it. We had initially, earlier, we made them into gods. Now we make them into all these different species. We make them, and and that is just something to consider a possibility. Just like when we say, oh, well, actually, there are no different locations and space. Fascia is literally metabolizing space. Because what is space? Space is density. And that's really, why do we call it dimensions, different densities? It's space is density. So through the compression and the release, and if you think about it, you think you expand yourself out, all of a sudden, the fascia relaxes, it becomes more fluid again, it becomes that fluid matrix. Well, God knows where you are in the galaxy, right? If you want to call it that location, that's exactly what it is. And as soon as you go back in, you contract, 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 you are in this earth plane, but in reality, it's just a choice that you can make by, oh, let me expand out, oh, solar system, right? Because that's what it is. But you could say, oh, I don't understand it. Well, you don't have to understand it because you can feel it. The fascia is telling you, are you expanded? Does it matter if you expand it galactically or solar systematically or whatever it's called? It doesn't matter. That's what that contraction and expansion of information and sometimes when you have information that doesn't it's not congruent, it's not aligned with what you know, with your architecture, if you want to call it that, then you start contracting, right? So it's the body becomes your tool now, your absolute tool, more than ever. We've always in the shows we did, in our gatherings for 5 years with Earth Nouveau, we always talked about the body. But now it's taken on a really multidimensional role.
Yes.
So what has changed? Literally nothing, other than our perception.
Right.
So we can apply this now, but we have to widen the horizons. We have to have this helicopter view a little bit. We have to allow ourselves to expand. I think there's a permission slip maybe to it, and if you do it often enough, then all of a sudden the body adapts, right? And once you start adapting, then you don't have to talk about it anymore. You don't have to translate it, explain it, because you just become that. You embody it. And through the embodiment, you start stabilizing those new energies. You're not stabilizing those new energies on this planet by talking highfalutin, blah, blah, but you can't actually embody it.
Right. Right. Or creating these different compositions to connect to these things that you already connected to. Because if we're really looking at unity consciousness, and that goes out beyond again beyond Earth into the galaxies, into space, we're already connected to all these stars and systems. And the way that I perceive it is actually very parallel to if you were to look at visually, but even energetically look at the fascia, is that if you're feeling into where any star may be, you have a thought about it, that connection is already there because you're already connected to all of them, and they're already all of you. Everything is all each other and unified. It's just where are you tuning your dial? Where are you through your physicality, what frequency bandwidth are you actually bringing through your, I look at it more like a resonant chamber than a vehicle in many ways, because it is that, it has all the tuning
Absolutely.
devices, and everything, however you're tuning it is doing that. But so is the octave that say you're thinking a thought. What is that? The thought has a frequency that's tuned to a certain velocity or a certain energy, and that's what you're in a way you want to say getting, but that's that star system, or that not separate being that you connect with. That's an most likely not a form at all. But if something visual, visually, ocularly appears or feels a certain way in some type of a form, it's because that's what the mind needs to create a comprehension of the experience. But that might not even be the case. So all these things are
Exactly.
dissolving through the disillusion of needing all these definitions, needing all these boxes and definitions. And that's why um, I was really excited to have this conversation and share these things with people, is because as you widen your perspective, you realize that a lot of these, stories and overly detailed things we really don't need. And it's in the way of just thinking the thought and going to that place, which is really a dimensional frequency. It's an octave and it's a frequency. So if you want to expand your awareness, you're discarding all this extra other stuff that is no longer relevant. That was part of the busyness and distraction of other things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this is what rattles the cage at the moment because, it's speeding up so much now that the story that was still valued and valuable maybe last week is no longer. So it's
Right.
almost like it's not even now, we used to talk about, the uncertainty because there's absolutely, we had no certainty where to go, what's next and things like that. That's completely dissipated now as well because, you know, that's no longer relevant because once you understand coherence, then it's going to happen anyway. We're going beyond thought, we're going beyond belief system and all of that, and I appreciate it's a tough one, but that's why I said there has to be a certain level of practice maybe, and I still myself, I sometimes, go back and be like, no, 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 don't do that. But once you start living with a certain level of awareness, you can appreciate that all of a sudden you do things you didn't do the way before. And there's no particular reason you didn't work on anything or you didn't release a limiting belief or anything. Everything just changes, it recalibrates. Just like how we define coherence with this inevitability, and also the fear disappears. It lets go, not just the fear, all the emotions, these old emotions that were all part of the fragmentation. And also I think the other thing is we are now more open, we're having that stabilizing architecture running the show on this planet and within ourselves. We are more open to feel the emotions. It's okay because they're no longer destabilize us, right? No, we're just feeling them. That's all right, right? We're stable enough to hold that energy that, you know, used to be distortion, but energy is energy, we know. And now we're no longer making the distinction between right or wrong. This is bad, good or bad. This is pain. Well, no, pain is communication. That the fascia is basically trying to tell you something. There is a distortion, might not be in you that you're perceiving it, as I said earlier on. It could be on a different planet, it could be a friend you are perceiving. But then of course there's the question, you know boundary. There's freedom
Right.
in having healthy boundaries. It's not separation. We can no longer think from a separation perspective now. We have to start thinking unity consciousness. Not because we want to go into this is a new concept now, but because that's what it is. We are not separate from each other. There is a relational, but by using, and you said, the words can be spells, and this is why I've always been so keen on reframing the words. And because I look at the energy of the word, and certain words I can't use because they've been so bastardized energetically. But if I look at other words like architecture, how do you function? It's not a machine language or anything. I do have to just excuse myself for 1 second, if I may.
Sure. Sure.
Keep on talking. I'm getting something. I just got a whole box of
Oh,
Christmas cookies delivered,
oh, amazing.
coherently aligned
I love it. That's amazing.
for my sister. Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay. Um, uh, my thought evaporated into the fascia. The fascia of
Well, that's good.
space. Well, but you know what I was going to say before you got your cookies was was
Mhm.
that which is amazing, um, is that what I've been experiencing, and this to me feels obvious, but because the sustaining ability of the frequency is, returning, really, returning to purity on the planet to be held by each and everyone that's staying and sustaining and choosing to cultivate, stabilize, anchor, etc. But because of that, um, that coherence to me is implied because that's how light functions. It functions as it's innately ordered. Like it is ordered. There is a divine right order, and the orchestration that's always been is now really able and is implementing and integrating, but it's actually stabilized now into the grid network on the planet and other ones as well, other systems, because it can be so. And that means because it can be so and it's already been declared long ago, that means it is. So that means everything that needs to arrive within the networks, within the unified conscious network, if you're tuned harmonically that way in coherence, it will arrive right when it's meant to. So right when you need your cookies will arrive, right when,
Exactly.
so I kind of laugh at things like manifestation and all of these things. It's like you don't need to do all these specific things to, get certain things. You have the intention, obviously, or you are emitting a frequency, and that is the organized order of coherence that is innately bringing it in the right time where you don't need to look for that yet. It a UPS driver brings it, or or however, whoever, whenever that connection, say you're connecting now, this is just one example, but connecting to star families or other soul family people that are here now, or certain information, or disconnecting, recalibrating, moving to a different location, it's all arriving as it
It
is.
it is arriving, and it's not as if by magic. We used to say as if by
Yeah.
magic, but now, as you explaining it now, it's physics,
Yeah.
you know.
And
And
frequency.
yes, we can say that was not a possibility, when we're still running the rescue and the fragmentation. But this is now the time to acknowledge that this is so we're going back to those principles. And they're not even laws or rules or anything. Those are inevitabilities.
Right. It's
And
a
and
it's a promise. It's known. It
yeah,
is. Light
it is.
is.
It is. And you know what? I mean, talking about the cookies, because I had one thought, because she often sends me this year she hasn't said anything. And I thought, would be nice if I get some. Literally
And there you go.
2 weeks
See?
later, here they are. And I'm like, inevitability.
Yeah, it
Having
is.
said that, if they wouldn't have arrived, if I wouldn't have thought, oh my God, this is not working, this coherence thing. No, because it doesn't work that way. Whatever has to arise will arise. And
Right.
it's not a divine timing either. I mean, sort of you feel tempted to say, yeah, okay, finally, divine timing, we can use it. And it's got nothing to do with divinity. It's got literally to do with my shoulders relaxing, the fascia, and allowing the threshold portal of things to start flowing through the heart, if you wish, through the compression chamber here. It is that.
Yeah.
And we will find better words for that as we go along from a scientific perspective, I'm sure. But of course, this is when I've already lost interest in all of that because we'll be doing something else already by then, right?
Right, we've been overbeating that tree, I feel like.
Because I mean that's not who I am. I'm not here to, I'm just here to like, whoa, have you looked at that? Because that's what I do. And then as soon as I write something, I forget about it. So I literally have to, okay, what did I write then? Because it's no longer important to me because I'm already on to the next thing. And I've done this all my life and without going into story now, you know, just because that is my metabolism. That's how I digest information, meaning, if you wish. And even meaning is no longer needed as we stop the search. And everything just becomes like getting up in the morning, have a coffee. I'm knitting at the moment. I'm just knitting for hours and hours. God knows what I'm doing while I'm knitting. Knitting, restoring timelines. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, okay.
I believe so.
Yeah. Well, otherwise I
Right,
wouldn't be doing it.
right.
Because I know myself well enough. I painted for 1 year and then I stopped and I will paint again, but that's not at the moment. I have to write. So, what was the fascia definition? I wrote some fascia definition, right? We've talked
Uh,
about it lovely now, but there's a definition.
let's see.
The
Is
micro
this a
definition, yeah, the connective intelligence that links every part of a system into a continuous responsive whole. So there you got it. It's all
right?
there. And then, of course, if we look at it metaphorically, it's like a spider web, right? And this is where, if you snap your finger here, it reverberates through the entire web. This is another way of looking at your impact. If you go like destabilize and go all fragmented again because you can't hold the information, you can't hold the consciousness because you have no integrity about anything that your physical body requires, you're destabilizing the entire system.
Yes. And that's why
And
when those things are so-called not arriving, is because that's what you want to say technically would be a decoherent field. But that goes through the whole. So if the case is otherwise, which the hope is, as people are coming to that, is that everything is innately cohesively connecting or even deconnecting through the web, right? Because I feel like that's what's a lot of what's going on in different waves right now is things are falling away or getting pulled apart that don't belong how they are. Whether it's somebody is, say their job or their relationships or where they are, etc. Right? Because it's like, but this isn't actually coherent for why you're here. So we need to pull that apart and get that away and open up and expand those systems so you can feel, so you can hear, so you can receive different information, which is energy, but you have other energy in the doorway. We're going to just pull that apart for you, because like that can't stay here. It can't stay on the planet. It can't stay in anyone's experience because it's decoherent. So it's coming apart in those ways to create that function through the web so that everything can continue in forward movement.
absolutely. And I also think, when you look at it from that web perspective and the intricacy of it, right? And how it all functions together, you also know now from it that you can often no longer entertain a certain environment that doesn't work, that is no longer coherently aligned with your architecture, with your current perception, whatever you want to call it, right?
Right.
And this is really, I think, important because, for so long, we've been forcing ourselves into a sort of community, into a sort of field, because we were thinking, oh, it's all love and heart and this and that. And in reality, it's architecture. And if if there's no congruency, if there's no coherency, then you're collapsing yourself by forcing yourself, and of course you're collapsing and implicating the other person at the same time too. And I think what I've been exploring, and I know so deeply from a knowingness perspective, is those people that are supposed to be in your life, they will now show up. People that you have never met, people that have a certain match, frequency match, architectural match with you, that will exponentialize your perception of, because they are meant to be in your life and they could not be in your life. They weren't ready themselves because now the fragmentation is finished.
Right.
And we still need healers and all of that, absolutely. But lots of people who have been, like, the roles that I've taken on were literally not part of my um, architecture. I know that now. Of course, there was a necessity to do whatever I did, and nothing is ever lost, nothing is ever gained. It is exactly what it is. But there's a possibility now for people to have a completely different perspective, a completely different way of manifestation, interaction, and that can then filter down into whatever. But if you have this web that you're working with, and you've got all these flies popping in, and all these people come in and ripping, what are you doing? You have to get out.
Right.
It's not their fault. You have to literally know, this is my web, this is my foundation, this is my house, talking about architecture, and I have healthy boundaries, right? Coming into my house, there's nothing wrong or right about that. It just is. Having said that, that will fall away too,
Mm-hmm.
because coherence will just bring in those that are supposed to be in your life or not. So it's actually quite exciting.
It is. It is.
And the most amazing thing is there's nothing better than getting Christmas cookies now.
Right. There really
Right?
isn't. There's
How
nothing.
does it get better than that? It's
There's nothing.
crazy.
There's nothing better. Well, well, this has been really great. I feel like I looked and we've been talking for a while, but what other better way to end than talk about Christmas cookies arriving and also,
Exactly.
well, the important note to end on too, in summary, is that I know there is a lot of recalibration in those ways for many people where things are falling, you could say falling apart or coming undone or getting reconfigured because it must. Like things must come apart that don't belong. And the imperative thing is to just detach and let it go. And I know it sounds like that sounds complex for people that have been in certain modes or ways of perceiving. But the most brilliant and beautiful and correct alignments arrive if you let go of what is being moved out of your way. And I really wanted to make that an important point because I feel like that is happening on a lot of waves. But it's meant to happen because there's something more grandiose that's just going to fall into your lap. And you don't have to go look for it, or create all these different, ceremonies to find it. You can literally just allow something to fall away, make that space. And align with your soul song really is just being yourself, and then it arrives. So, um, and I do think that does parallel a lot with the fascia because it's part of all that is, and it's part of the transmitter network. And you could call it a million other scientific terms, but really it's frequency and it's how everything is, how everything functions on the waves through sound and light. So
Beautiful.
infinite, everything is so infinite,
Absolutely.
and we unlimit these thought patterns, we can discover how beautiful things really can be. So I thank you so much
Yeah,
for.
I thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I
You're
really enjoyed it.
welcome. Do you want to tell everybody that's listening how they can find your Substack? Or I can put it in the link also, or
Yeah,
both.
just put it on a link. Was Substack and just put my name in, Martina Grubmueller. And that's
Okay.
when it comes up. Yeah. And as I just want to say, you're absolutely right. Why I chose not to do another book, because it wouldn't have been conducive to the energy. Because as soon as you write something, and I started looking at, shall it be another book? And I thought, no, 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 because in I don't know, in a couple of months' time, it's old information. So that's why I started getting myself an account on Substack, you know.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Cool. Beautiful. Love it.
Thank you, Zareen.
You're
Great chat.
welcome.
And I
You're
look forward
welcome.
to seeing you again soon.
You too. Thank you so much.